Hello. Lately, I have made it a practice to touch upon some interesting musings before going into our main topic of the Yoga Sutras. This week, I've been thinking of the past weekend. What I have been thinking of is what sets humankind apart from the rest of the living things. People say invention of the wheel, discovery of fire. Maybe the wheel was invented after some Homo sapiens or Homo erectus. I saw a log rolling down, probably pushed a log or something that was round. Fire, probably by lightning struck a tree. And tool use, yeah, okay. But other living beings have also been seen using tools, albeit in a rudimentary fashion. Chimps use sticks and they put it into termite hill, and when the termites crawl up, they eat them. Crows have been said to use tools of some sort. Again, I think a stick or something. I don't recollect completely. And chimps, they not only grooming, chimps have been known to salivate certain insects, ants, and place it on wounds on another chimp's body. That shows some social construct, and it has been there, albeit again, maybe we can't call it civilization, but definitely animal. There are several animals that live together, protect each other. So I guess there's nothing much there that sets us apart, because as when we do have all those traits, but then no, it's not unique. I mean, at least in some form of the other, they exist. I'm sorry. What else is it? Is it creativity, music, imagination itself, music, painting, dance forms? All these, I'm pretty sure animals don't have the faculty of imagination. So that being the case, so that is probably. But I've read somewhere that we are very closely related to rodents, and that was it was a revelation to me. It seems about 60, 70 million years back. Well, at least the rodents and we have a common mammalian ancestor. That's something interesting. But coming back to the topic, obviously, if we go back down the evolutionary change, we of course come at that one cell organism, I think, that crawled out of the goo that was the earth then and came up. And Homo sapiens, as most researchers agree now, came out of Africa, probably anywhere between 400,000 to 250,000 years ago. They came out of Africa. And by the way, that's a good movie. Please watch it, Out of Africa. It's a Meryl Streep movie, I think from 1980s, that won quite a lot of Oscars. That's a very good movie. So that's a, by the way, again. So coming back to the question, what sets humankind apart? As I said, inventiveness, creativity, music, art forms, dance forms, imagination, writing novels. I think that's pretty much, I don't think any other species has that faculty. So many aspects can be proposed of what really sets us apart: technology, current state of science, progress made, all that. But the last week, I've been thinking of something completely different. And okay, this episode is probably going to be less of Yoga Sutra and more of this. Please pardon me. I contemplated a lot. I thought about it a lot, and it was an epiphany. And I think what sets human beings apart the most, dramatic flourish, is cooking. We hardly give a thought to it. We eat food every day. But I really went into some deep thought about it. When I contemplate cooking, I'm in awe of it. It's something, I'm a Wodehouse I'm a Wodehouse fan. So I remember in one of the books, Jeeves tells Wooster, it boggles the mind, and Bertram Wooster responds, I looked at my mind, it definitely boggled, something to that effect. So to me, I find this very mind-boggling. So yeah, so I found I'm in awe of it. It's so breathtaking. If I'm allowed to use a pun figuratively, it's sumptuous. Cooking is something very sumptuous, as far as I know, if I can use that word. It's so resplendent. How could such a thing evolve in the human mind? Can you think about it? There's a maybe cooking flesh because fire had started. It was initially a piece of meat fell by accident into the fire. Then they started cooking meat. Could be a semblance of truth in that. But for the earth of me, I just cannot understand its. I cannot conceive that some human went ahead and took some seeds that were growing in a plant with their husk, dehusked them, and then boiled them in water and found rice. What could have even made them do it? Whoever started it, how did they even imagine that they could do such a thing? It's not simply plucking a fruit out of a tree and eating, is it? It's going. I just I'm unable to think of any reason why anyone would do that out of the blue. If, whoever thought that you could take some rice and lentils, grind them together, and then steam them and evolve what is now said to be the most healthy food in the world? The commonplace, the once commonplace, the humble idli has now been raised to this exalted status. Can you just believe it? How would you imagine putting two things like this together, grinding them, thinking that the batter should be this consistency, and then putting steaming it? However, did they do it? And on top of that, they said, okay, almost a similar kind of nowadays. Most households use the same batter, and they simply put it around a tawa and very thinly. I can't for the life of me do that, but and something entirely different comes out, something crispy and those, and then they invented chutney and sambar, modapudi, everything to go with it. Completely unimaginable for me. It's amazing. We all eat mavud, avaka, lemon pickle, nartanga pickle, so many kinds of hundreds of varieties of pickle throughout India with different names, different kinds. And can you imagine? I don't know if anybody has connected this up, but chili came to India only in the 15th century, brought to us by the Portuguese, by Vasco da Gama. And so, how did somebody think that, oh, till then we were using only black pepper to add any kind of a spice to our food? Chilies were unheard of. So, then who came up with this saying, oh, we can use this to make pickles? Maude, all that stuff. What would have made them think that, yeah, this is possible? I mean, these so simple things that we take for granted everyday life. I wonder what lies behind these. Again, I want to quote Woodhouse, not quote, but if those of you who have read quite a lot of Wooster's, Woodhouse Wooster, would have heard of Anatoly, the French cook. And Woodhouse, through Bertram Wooster, defines him so well. Wooster says, Anatoly is God's gift. Anatoly is God's gift to the gastric juices. There couldn't be a more perfect definition of a master chef. And our tongue has developed so much taste. Something, each thing tastes different. I don't think animals have that. We love that variety in food. I think avial, I mean, look at it. Mixture of all kinds of vegetables, put it together, and with buttermilk added to it. I'm sorry, I'm taking too much of this time, but think about it. It's absolutely. I think cooking is the pinnacle of humankind's achievement, and I think that's what sets us apart from everything else. So, having taken quite some time, that's 12 minutes, I think. So, maybe I'll go up to 20, 25 minutes today. I apologize, but this was too tempting to discuss. Namaskaram, namaste, greetings. My name is Ramakrishnan. I am from Chennai, India. As usual, I'll begin with the second aphorism of the book one, Samadhipada of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which defines which both defines yoga and also states what is its objective. Yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the restraint of the modification of the senses. We have discussed this in detail, so I'm not going into that. But I always quote this because this has to be completely understood. In a previous episode, we touched upon what are called kleshas. These are in the sadhana pada. We discussed samadhi pada first, took a few things. We might go back to it for a little bit. We come to sadhana pada, and these 5 afflictions, they are called kleshas, and we can translate them into afflictions. They are defined in from Sutras 2.3 to 2.9, and there's something that is very, very important to know, because I don't know how many people know this. The first aphorism of sadhana pada is very clear, emphatic, unambiguous, and this is where Patanjali says what is coming after this. He calls it Kriya Yoga. I don't mean to cause offense to anybody, nor am I debating any other schools of thought, and I'm not against anything. But there have been ships sailing under false colors. Yeah. So, I think there are 2 or 3 philosophers who devise their own system of meditation, etc., and name them Kriya Yoga. But in our context, in Patanjali Sutras context, when we say Kriya Yoga, it is as described in the Sadhana Pada, and that's whenever, if I use the term Kriya Yoga, it refers specifically to this. So, if we are purists, we will only take Sadhana Pada as Kriya Yoga as another name for Sadhana Pada, which is what Patanjali says. The first aphorism says what follows is Kriya Yoga. So, having said that, in the first 2.1, Patanjali, then 2.2 we leave as not very relevant to our purposes. From 2.3, he lists out what are the afflictions. The 5 afflictions are avidya, which is ignorance, nescience, lack of knowledge, and asmita, which is the ego, raga, that is attachment, dvesha, it is pain, aversion. Dvesha means aversion, and abhinivesha, love of life. Now these, especially the pleasure and love of life might raise certain questions, saying, why are these afflictions? We'll come to it. And when describing avidya, ignorance, Patanjali very emphatically states that ignorance is the fertile breeding ground for the rest of the afflictions: ego, attachment, aversion, and longing for life, fear of death. In Sutra 2.5, Patanjali defines ignorance, but in the larger context, in the context of attaining liberation. And as we have stated quite often, that is not our purpose. Our scope is very limited. So for our purposes, what I will define it as is, we will adapt it to mean the misinterpretation of sensory inputs received by the processor, which we have discussed. We know what's the processor, the controller, the database, and the ego. So avidya is the cause of misinterpretation by the processor of sensory inputs, the matching with database, all that happens. But the analytical reasoning that needs to be applied by the processor does not happen, and this leads to consequences which we will discuss. Sutra 2.6 defines ego, and ego is one of the main causes. The participant in the misinterpretation by the processor of sensory inputs. It's basically the ego. Then we have discussed before, if the ego prevails rather than the processor, and then there's a conflict, then bad things happen. Raga, the attachment. Here, attachment, let's again limit this. Attachment is to the forms of pleasure and the means that lead to pleasure. It's running after these. We want the pleasure and the means to achieve that pleasure. If you harken back to what we discussed about the processor receiving sensory inputs that were not in the database, so it's new and it's stored there for later. This is that very often. So there is an experience, and then there is some pleasurable feeling out of it that's stored in the database, but then the thought arises that what is stored in that pleasure, if it is pleasure, if we call it pleasure, is the thought arises that we need to experience that pleasure again and again, then it becomes an obsession. So we are not, again, we are talking about our daily life. We are not becoming munivars, sages or sannyasis or wanting liberation, but this is important in our daily life. The meaning of attachment here, it's limited in scope. We'll address it. We are not talking about usual attachment. Definitely, again, we are mortal, we are human, but attachment here, we'll use it in the context of obsession, addiction, drug addiction, alcoholism, such things. It's more of an obsession. We'll limit it to that. Sutra 2.8 is a very pretty sutra. It just says aversion, actually. It says aversion to pain. Pain is both spiritual and, mental and physical, of course. Anything that causes any sort of pain. That is dvesha. We'll come to that again. What is this pain? We'll look at, but the definition itself is sufficient. Pain, something that causes us a bad feeling. It could be anything, whether physical or mental. A fire burns us, or somebody says something that hurts us. All that comes under dvesha. If you look at it, Patanjali has said both attachment and aversion are afflictions. And if you think about it, the guy has really thought a lot about this, and why is attachment an affliction? I have said this before, sorry, I should have said this in the beginning. It's the kleshas, the afflictions that cause the vrittis, the klishta and aklishta vrittis, the colored and uncolored. So this is important to match these two. So he describes both pain and attachment to pleasure come under the same as an affliction. Sutra 2.9 is we need to have an insight into this to really understand it, because it's, on the face of it, it's a very not incomprehensible, but we would think, why did Patanjali do this? So we need to understand it very well, and I'll explain it later, this alone, in another episode. It is it's abhinivesha, which is a love of life. Very difficult to understand, but we'll talk about it later. This one, probably we need to get into it at some length. So I think with these, I will end today's conversation. These were explained before, I know, but since I took a break, I just wanted to refresh the mind. We have talked about the 5 afflictions, which are ignorance, lack of knowledge, the ego, the I-ness, and raga, attachment, dvesha, aversion, and love of life. These are the 5 afflictions. Please keep these in mind. We'll discuss only love of life next. What is left to discuss is, after that, is the 9 obstacles to nirodha, that is restraint. We need to, as yoga's chitta vritti nirodha, yoga is the restraint of the modification of the mind stuff. We just need to look at these 9 obstacles again. I've covered it, but again, as I said, because of the hiatus, I'd like to talk about them again. And with that, we will come to an end of the complete problem statement portion of this. It completes. I'm sure. I hope you have got it by now that this forms the entire uh, universe that needs to be addressed, so that we can now manage these and have a better life, less anxiety, less stress, once we understand this, and what are the practices that are to be uh, adapted and adopted to put into effect these these solutions for us. Once we do this, we'll be quite ready to start looking at solutions. I'll leave you with that today. Namaskaram, namaste, greetings. Thank you for being here. If you like this video, or please do like it. If you have taken away something from this, if you have learned something, please do like it, share it. The link to my playlist is, as usual, the playlist containing the other episodes is in the description below, and please watch the other episodes. Click on the bell icon to get notified about other such talks. I've said it before, the only intention in starting this channel and doing these episodes is to spread the knowledge that I have. That's all. And it's not much knowledge that I have. I don't know much Sanskrit. All I am doing is reading books on Yoga Sutras from various, and I'm more of a compiler, you can say, an editor who is putting together all this stuff and making it easier to absorb. Yeah. Thank you very much. All of you have a great day, a great week. I'll be back next Sunday. Namaste.